Hello, welcome to the Apple Insider podcast. I'm William Gallagher. Our sponsor this week is Fastmail, more about that later. And joining me in a week with, no news at all, really, is Wesley Hilliard. Wes, let's go straight to it. You said you would be all in on every beta as soon as it's released. Did you do it?
I forgot my Mac existed, so it's still running Sonoma, but everything else I have something on a beta anyway. I don't have all my TVs and HomePods on beta yet, just one of them, but getting there.
Right, you forgot the Mac. Sometimes I don't know why I talk to you, but all right. So Wes has done the beta route. I'm going to admit that I've accidentally done one and a half, and of course, this is exactly the opposite of what we have said to you, what everyone says to you, what you know in your heart of hearts, that you should never install a betas. But since we didn't even seem to manage to convince ourselves, this week's bonus for paid subscribers, App Insider Plus, it's all about the dark side of betas. When betas go wrong, and I will tell you now, it is not pretty. Whereas, actually, iOS 18, iPadOS 18, macOS Sequoia, they definitely are very pretty. The only thing is, right at the moment, maybe that's all they are. I mean, where the betas are here, where is Apple Intelligence? Why can't I get Siri to do that nice thing around the borders on the iPhone? What are they doing to me?
Well, I believe that's called an alpha. Apple still has it internal right now. It will actually be beta when it launches this fall. Apple made that very clear that these are going to be beta features, kind of like how Persona is still in beta on Apple Vision Pro, even though it's been part of the launch since February. Apple Intelligence will be launching in beta, but I keep hearing from different places, and I think it was kind of hinted at during the keynote, the tools will appear in the developer betas during the summer. So we can expect those sometime in July. I expect the beta testers will have access to them, but once it launches in September, it's going to be a slow rollout. They're going to do it almost by person to get a random rollout going, I guess, to slowly ramp server load on Apple's end. Not to mention ChatGPT's on the other side of things. So that actually probably won't even come with Apple Intelligence. Like, this is going to be a step-by-step rollout. We'll probably get Apple Intelligence beta when this releases in September. It'll be there day one, but very few people will have it. I mean, you have to have an iPhone 15 Pro or Pro Max to get it anyway on the iPhone. And then I would say 18.1 will see the ChatGPT functionality added. And then again, it's just who, what, when, and how. But we'll see. We'll get into that in the main show.
Now you've said it, I actually remember that Siri itself was listed as in beta for a long time. I can't remember how long. But I didn't realise Personas ever was in beta. I obviously missed that bit. So we're, 4 months into the beta process for that? Have they just forgotten to take the beta label off, or is it actually changing?
Well, it's definitely updating every time. I haven't. So I just checked the settings menu as we're talking because I'm wearing my Vision Pro, and it says Persona beta still. So even in Vision OS 2, it is technically a beta, but it is improving. Every release of Vision OS so far has improved Personas in some way.
Well, how about this then? Let's talk about Vision OS, because this is the first time I remember taking a gamble and upgrading to beta and finding I'm not disappointed by it, but there seems to be comparatively few of the things we were told about on the iPhone that are there ready to use. I mean, there's some nice things. I'm enjoying it. What's it like with Apple Vision Pro? Because I keep hearing that, I saw the keynote just like everybody else did. Apple said a few nice things. And there's a suggestion that Apple may have even downplayed it a bit, that there's more little tucks and folds that are particularly good. Are you getting those? Do you like them? What are they?
Apple's running into a keynote problem where, first off, they give everyone WWDC as this date and time. Be there. You're going to learn about all the new platform updates. And then they do it, and now we're at 6 operating systems that they're trying to stuff into less than 2 hours, because the last half hour, I believe, was all Apple Intelligence. So we're getting minutes with some of these operating systems. tvOS was a sentence. So what are they doing themselves a disservice by trying to stuff it all into one conference? Should they be holding, smaller events for each operating system, and then release a video for home and TV, right? Like, I'm just not sure this format is going to be able to fit everything they want. Or people need to understand there's so much more information outside of the keynote. I think a lot of Apple fans do kind of just stop at the keynote, and then we're over here learning from State of the Union and the sessions how much there is. These interviews that the executives have been doing have all eked out little details here and there. So every operating system actually got their lion's share of updates, except for maybe iPadOS. But the Vision OS actually, yes, has quite a bit going on with it beyond just the couple of tentpole features that we saw during the keynote.
Well, just to stop you there for a second, I think, to be fair, Apple has 5.5 platforms. I'm not sure you can ever call tvOS a full one yet.
It's a mature platform. There's nothing else to add to it. What do you add to a TV platform unless you redesign it? And we've seen that happen a couple of times. But again, they got a couple things in tvOS. We'll jump to that soon. But Vision OS, it's a good one. I heard, I believe it was Mike Hurley, say that this is like a Vision OS 1.5. The only reason why it's 2.0 is because it goes with the cadence of the rest of the operating systems. It's only been 4 months on the public market. What are they really going to address? What are they going to do? But what they have done is nice. It's a lot of quality of life stuff. One of the most significant things you'll notice is hand tracking, and is now done at 90 hertz, which is with the refresh rate of the display. So objects moving with your hands is going to appear much more natural. There's a lot of UI stuff that's going to feel a lot nicer now.
There's the thing I saw about the Magic Keyboard, that you'll be able to see it. And I wasn't sure whether that meant a virtual Magic Keyboard replacing that, what looks to me like a horrible one, or just it kind of breaks through the environment. Yeah. Is that there, and is it good?
They're just cutting a hole in the environment.
Right.
And I haven't tried it. I have a Magic Keyboard it's actually just on a shelf. I have a black extended keyboard
next to your Mac, disregarded, forgotten.
It's a different shelf. But
well, there you go.
Even more disregarded. It has a bit of dust on it. I like my mechanical keyboards, but I do pull it out every now and then to test it with the Vision Pro because of that exclusive feature set. I think I'm going to eventually get a hold of some of the newer keyboards just from Apple, just to try these things, because it's annoying that it's limited to Magic Keyboard, at least for now. We'll see if they open that up a little bit. But yes, it's doing a carve out specifically because before we knew where the keyboard was, the text corrections and suggestions bar would appear above the keyboard as if it was anchored, and now we're going to just erase the area around it. So here I am in Bora Bora, and there would be a Magic Keyboard in the sand kind of just sticking out a little bit if I had one turned on.
I have not one thin clue where Bora Bora is. I just remember it mentioned in films long ago. But are you a touch typist?
Yes, I don't need to see it.
Right. No,
I actually can, like the little nubs on the keys, right, that tell you where your home row is. As long as I can find those, I can type.
The F and the J keys, yes. Okay. So, not a massive improvement for you, but for people, there's got to be a line somewhere, because it looked to me like the virtual keyboard had to be hunt and peck. There was no way to actually type words with your hands in the middle of the air. So it's got to be better than that, but not full-on touch typing. Okay, so options there. Okay, that sounds
I had to pull
promising.
up a map to find Bora Bora, by the way, because it's literally the middle of nowhere. I had a feeling it was a Pacific island. I just where it is isolated and by itself. I feel like it's one of those things where if we didn't have satellites, we wouldn't even know it was there. You'd have to accidentally just run into it one day. It is literally the middle of the ocean. Like if you're standing in Los Angeles and you're looking at Australia, draw a line between those two and it's somewhere in there. That's it. It's just this big open plain around it of water. But it looks like a beautiful paradise. We got some palm trees, some lovely sand, waves waving in front of me.
Your voice is turning into a travelogue thing. I love the fact that you were able to just look it up because you're wearing the headset. Just, let's have a quick glance over there. I look at maps and opened it. How did you type Bora Bora? Or did it just know? Did you look at the letters B-O? I can't spell Bora Bora.
I've gotten to where I touch the keys. So you can press the keys by literally physically hitting them in the air. You don't get any feedback. Maybe we need an Apple Ring for that. But you can press the keys, and that's what I do, is I just press each key one at a time. If I'm in a rush, maybe I'll do the pinch, look, pinch, but that one just feels more unnatural, and I don't know. I know where the keys are, I guess. But
it sounds like you use that for looking up something on Apple Maps or maybe in Safari or something. For actual writing, you use a real key.
Oh, yes. Right now, like my Bluetooth, I have my Mac in my Vision Pro right now because I'm recording from it. So the keyboard and mouse is attached, and I could use the keyboard, but I'm also rotated about 100, maybe 90 degrees away from the keyboard right now, facing my microphone. I could have brought the keyboard with me, but it's not necessary for the recording of the podcast. But it's all one thing. What I need, William, is one of those evil layer chairs with the little foldy tray in the front where I can just sit in the middle of the room and spin around in circles, but have the keyboard in front of me at all times. That's what I need.
Okay, I'm picturing you stroking a white cat as you do this evilly. I think you're making this furniture up, but we should have it. You're saying that, though, has put me in mind of something. I am now in the position where very soon the Apple Vision Pro will at last be available where I am here in the UK, and I am very torn. The weight of that amount of money is likely to push me away from it. But one thing in the keynote I thought was really compelling was if you have somebody using their Mac like you are, but wrapped around with it. I'd actually thought that's what you got with Vision Pro, but apparently not. You get more of it. Yeah,
you can bring your 20-foot display into your Vision Pro now, William. You don't have to abandon your large, wide monitor anymore.
Yay. Okay. I gotta say, it's very difficult to clean that wide monitor. If you get to one end, it's time to start cleaning the other. And that would be gone now. I could just use Vision Pro. Okay, think of the hours saved.
It's a bit of a trick because it is basically two 4K monitors stacked side by side, but in a 3D space with no borders. Foveated rendering, which is actually performed on the Mac, which is really clever to take some of the workload off of the Vision Pro. But the foveated rendering basically makes it so whatever part of the display you're looking at is always sharp 4K resolution, and the rest of it's just nonsense. That actually makes it work so much better because you can't see what you can't see, and the rest of it's going to be just, like I said, just pixelated, blurry mess. If you can trick the system in letting you see it, it would be just sometimes if things slow down a little bit, you can catch it. But yeah, it makes sense why this works, and I'm glad they did it this way. They weren't ever going to do two monitors because then you'd have to do 3D spatial positioning and move the mouse cursor between 3D monitors. It would get messy. I think having one continuous display makes the most sense, and it's not a feature I'm going to use because I just don't really spend any time on the Mac, but I'm glad that it's there. But I did find out one key tidbit. So we learned in macOS, as we get to that in just a moment, that you can bring your iPhone display into the Mac, but Apple has a limitation. You can have only one continuity view active at a time. So you cannot wear the Vision Pro with the Mac inside of it with an iPhone in the Mac. You cannot make a iPhone turducken. It doesn't work that way.
Okay. Now, you use that word. I'm even going to attempt to pronounce it. When you put it that way, I'm glad. But I had no clue.
It's a turkey, a duck, and a chicken, and you stuff each of the smaller birds into the larger bird. It's a turducken.
Yeah, I'm trying to get away from that mental image. But I had no clue that was the thing. I suppose it makes sense. Does it? I mean, how much Apple stuff can you shove in your face in one go. But I'm oddly slightly disappointed. Well, actually, I mentioned earlier, we'll talk about betas properly in AppleInsider Plus, but I said I'd accidentally done things. I did intentionally, deliberately install macOS Sequoia because I'm supposed to be writing about it. But one of the things I thought I would have to write about, have to is the wrong word, want to write about, is this iPhone mirroring thing. And doubtlessly, that's not going to work without iOS 18 on the phone.
Right.
So I took the risk, I took the gamble, and it did not pay off because that feature isn't there yet at all. I could have read AppleInsider a bit more closely than I did and found that out.
Well, let's move on from Vision OS because we have a lot to talk about. But I just want to say there's a lot here. Go check out our roundups on AppleInsider. We'll have plenty of time to dig into this later. I expect after a couple of betas, I'm going to do an updated review of the Vision Pro. So let's tease that out a little bit. But this does change a couple of things, but it still doesn't address a lot of my primary concerns. But the Vision Pro, I think, is fine. There's just to conclude this section, there is some concern that because Apple didn't bring Apple intelligence to Vision Pro right away, and the limited update set, that there's now been a de-emphasis on Vision Pro and they've given up on it. I just want to clarify here that's not the case. First of all, the updates in the APIs on the developer side of things are quite extensive. The new gesture to get to Control Center is amazing. Looking at your hand to open the home view, love it. Like, all of that is really great. I love that we're seeing such clever innovations already, only a couple months into this being live on the market. So it's a good forward trajectory. And Apple Intelligence, guys, don't worry, it is coming to Vision Pro. They didn't deliberately leave it out because it's not coming. It is just not prioritized. So we could actually see it on Vision Pro this year during that rollout I mentioned earlier, where they're going to do it piece by piece, system by system. So Vision Pro could actually be added in at a later date. We don't have to wait for Vision OS 3 for that to happen. So we just have to be a little bit more patient as Apple gets their ducks in a row, their turduckens in a row. And as we move on to the next thing.
Actually, let's just stop there in a second, because the reason I was surprised it wasn't in Vision Pro is it seems to me they've packed everything into Siri, really. I mean, that isn't true, but a lot of it is in Siri and stuff like that. And Siri seems to be a big deal in Vision Pro. It's a way of communicating a lot of commands instead of typing. Siri and Apple Intelligence. I think the first thing to say is you did call it. You've been calling it Apple Intelligence for quite a while now, haven't you? So can
By
we
accident.
basically blame you? No, I think you put it in the air, it floated around, and now we've all got to deal with it. Although I'm really surprised to say, up to the moment of the keynote, I was thinking, please don't call it that, please. And then they did, and I'm possibly because I've written it out 70 times since. I'm kind of used to it. So, do you remember when, this might be before your time with Mac, it is before your time with Mac, there used to be PowerBooks, and I loved that name, and then Steve Jobs said, no, they're going to be MacBooks, and that seemed like such an ugly portmanteau word, but now I crave my MacBook Pro and things. We can get used to anything, can't we? So they could have called it William Intelligence, and we'd have got used to it eventually, maybe me faster than others.
Perhaps we should, let's ignore Apple's order of the keynote, because we got Vision OS out of the way and it doesn't have Apple Intelligence right now. But perhaps we should get Apple Intelligence done first, because I think that's what people want to hear about the most, and it touches every other operating system in some way besides tvOS. So
in some ways, actually, I wasn't surprised that they did it at the end, but the fact that it is everything is so imbued into it, part of me was thinking, how did they manage to find anything to talk about until they talked about Apple Intelligence? So yeah,
there is a reason for the order of the keynote, William. Did you figure it out?
Drama.
Of course, the suspense. No,
yes, actually.
Maybe partially, but there is a reason, and it is because Apple Intelligence is limited to iPhones with the A17 Pro processor or newer.
Oh, okay.
We could see, I expect the iPhone 16 base models will have the powerful neural engine just so it can run Apple Intelligence, because I don't think Apple's going to exclude standard users. It's just John Giandrea actually explained this really well. the iPhone 17 Pro just happened. It's not the first one with a neural engine. It's just the first one with a powerful enough neural engine to do this. And if anyone wanted to know why Apple waited to get into AI until now, it's because this is the moment they were waiting for. They needed a chip powerful enough on iPhone to run the models locally in the way that they wanted it, that they were satisfied with. And everything before that was, he even made the clarification, technically speaking, these models could run on older iPhones. It would just be take so much more time that it would stop feeling like magic and start feeling like a hassle. So that's why it's gated to this chipset. It is the first one that could actually achieve it. And as we move into A18 and A18 Pro, or perhaps the A17 on iPhone 16, we'll see what they do this year. We're going to see that big neural engine on more devices. So as Apple announces the new iPhones early September, I think they're going to make it a huge deal that every iPhone 16 can use Apple Intelligence, and that's going to be a market driver. But that's not what we're here to talk about, William. We're here to talk about the actual devices. So, by the way, it's M-series chips on Mac and iPad. So iPad Air, iPad Pro, and any Mac with the M-series chip can run Apple Intelligence as well.
So basically not Intel is what we're saying here.
Of course.
That's the secret here.
This may be the end.
Intel.
For Intel. This
yes.
macOS Sequoia, I believe, will be the last one for Intel machines.
I wondered if Intel would get any support this time round too, but they have. They've hung on in there, so good on Apple, I suppose. But let's not give Intel users Apple Intelligence. Come on, no.
So, William, I want you to explain to me, in the best of your knowledge,
right.
Apple Intelligence versus ChatGPT. What we're talking about here, because there seems to be some confusion over what's happened. There's some headlines going around that suggesting that ChatGPT is now powering the iPhone. Is that true?
Well, Elon Musk told me that personally. Yeah, so Lord. It must be true. Yeah. Okay, let's not go down that route.
I can hear people deleting the podcast right now. Yeah.
Okay, you're not one of them though, right?
No.
Anyway, I found it very clear when they were explaining Apple Intelligence does everything except the bits it can't, and then there's some determination that you could get a better answer from ChatGPT, and then it offers to send it away to it.
I'll offer even better, because I believe that even that's kind of mischaracterized. So Apple Intelligence is a group of Apple models. It's not. It is a large. Okay, so let's start over. There is a God model, I guess, that Apple bases everything off of. But what is happening on the iPhone is a series of smaller models that are specifically trained for each function. You have the writing tools model. You have the image generation model, and each of these are small enough and specific enough that they're able to run without needing to be bloated by things they don't need access to. And each of these models on device are very efficient. They're not going to, take a lot of power to run. Apple Silicon's really good at this. But then they scale upwards to the most extreme versions of the model that can run on device. Now, I can't remember the exact measurements, but the models on Apple servers using Apple Cloud Compute are about double the size starting of the models on the iPhone, and then they get bigger from there. So it's not that there's a gating factor with the power of the neural engine. It's just a gating factor of what do we want to accomplish on the phone versus the server. So it's a limitation set based on task, not like memory limits, basically. And when you need to do something that is server side, the information is passed in a way that is private. It's all private on that end. Apple can't even see your requests. They can't even see the responses they gave you. It's all end to end, as usual, by Apple, privacy, security, and they're not even training the base model on what you ask. That's one of the things people wondered. Everything you do with Apple Intelligence is private. The model doesn't learn from you, and that's what's very key here. So any image you give, any text you give, any file you give to Apple Intelligence is not being used to train the database. It is not a feedback loop. But anyway, the models on the server side, of course, have a little bit more access to more data, more information, but it's still personalized to you. Apple's models are personal intelligence models, meaning it only derives the data based on what it knows about the user and the user's environment. And the reason why it might need to go server side is to do more intensive calculations for specific tasks, not to go and ask Wikipedia about what a goldfish is, right? Now, if you do need that kind of information, there's a separate branch here, and that is ChatGPT and other LLMs. ChatGPT happens to be first, but Gemini and others will come later, and it will plug into this system. And what that means is if you are using the writing tools, the image, maybe not even the image generator, but the writing tools or Siri and other components of Apple Intelligence, and it needs world knowledge, and that's what Apple is calling it. If it needs world knowledge like events, places, history, you can poll ChatGPT, which has world knowledge, but in order to do so, you have to give it permission every time, and it will warn you what you're about to tell it, your query, your file, your image, what have you, and then you have to say, yes, send this to ChatGPT. And this is the best part. ChatGPT is legally bound by law to throw everything away. ChatGPT cannot use your prompts, your files, or any of your information to train its data. They don't have access to it. It all gets thrown away, and there's no IP or personal information attached to it, and it's all free for all iPhone users. So, did any of that help?
William? Except it's left me with what's in it for ChatGPT. I mean, I've heard a story that they're not being paid.
No one's
this.
getting paid.
Okay, what are they, like writers or something? It's just, this isn't the usual model for corporations.
I did find it ironic that ChatGPT scraped all of the artists of the internet for information, and artists are generally asked to be paid in exposure because they'll get more popular and get more views. And now Apple is paying ChatGPT in exposure, and I find that very funny.
We had a leak in my office recently, and I said to the plumber, I'll mention you on the Apple Insider podcast if you'll give us some money. For some reason, he did not go for it. So that's the only reason I'm not mentioning the name of our plumber and giving his phone number in the notes. Okay, exposure.
They're playing the long game, William. So basically, and this is probably why Google wasn't first up, not only is it a competitor, but Apple does have its own LLM. Let's make that clear from the top. Apple Intelligence is its own large language model, not a baby model. It is a ChatGPT competitor. It is its own large database trained on information. Some of it licensed. Apple paid for images for the image generator. They didn't scrape images to train that, presumably. The text editor, of course, trained on professional documents, but they paid for. But we're finding out Applebot, which has existed since about 2015, has been using public data to train the model as well, which is going to get into a whole different discussion we can have later, William, about your rights to your own property and what it means to post something to the internet and how these companies have been going about this, and Apple doing the right thing on one side of the coin, but then doing what everyone else is doing, which is presumably the wrong thing on the other side of the coin. So this is all, there's so much to talk about. We could do a whole podcast on Apple Intelligence, but we do need to get to the other operating systems.
I'm glad you're saying that, because this is getting miserable, I think.
What stands out to you?
The features of the iPhone, actually. I am more a Mac man than I am an iPad or an iPhone man, although that is kind of shuffles around a bit. The Mac is always the thing I want to know about, but these days it's also the thing I expect will get the least, apart from tvOS. So this time out, inside baseball, you don't need to know this, but while the keynote was talking about Apple Watch, I was busy writing up something else for Apple Insider about the keynote. So I missed all of the Apple Watch stuff. And from what I've read since, it doesn't feel like I missed a great deal at all. And Safari has so little in it this time, so little new. I mean, good, but little, that they basically also told you about the things it added before. So it all came down to me to the newest things in terms of what we will use and what's in the betas with the iPhone, such as, I mean, I know it sounds silly, but just the rearrangement of the apps. You talked about this before, and I thought I have no interest. But what have I done since it came out? I've made one page that has one thin row of icons, and for some reason I really like it. That's it. The icons of the apps stood out for me in the whole keynote. Please tell me you had something a bit more profound.
Well, I mean, what stood out for you in Apple Intelligence specifically? Is there any feature
I'm
there
sorry,
that
I went
you're...
off on one then.
Yeah, you're fine. Is there any feature there you're going to use that you think is going to be important? Is it going to replace any tools you already have?
Short answer, no. Craig Federighi did that thing of saying you can change your text to friendlier or more professional. Mm-hmm. Well, I know when I start who I'm writing it for, so I'm never going to change my mind and use that. I also I'm quite happy. If it takes me an hour to write an email, I'm fine with that because it's important to me. And I'm advertising my writing, I suppose, as a writer. So none of those tools would do. And I'm certainly not going to do the thing and make up a story. But I think you disagree. Yeah.
Well, I've seen a couple of people talk about this. Chalk and Berry over at the Twitterific company, the Icon Factory. Yes. So he's actually brought this up a couple of times, and I agree with him. It seems like the people who want to use AI tools the most are the ones who hate creation the most. Meaning, some people actually enjoy the process of the hard work of writing or drawing something. Apple actually made this really clear, and there's so many places you can go to just go watch all the interviews. The talk show live was magnificent. I watched that in my Vision Pro. They did a spatial live stream of it, which was cool. It succeeded. It was in HD, so it was, but it succeeded. And it was fine. It was enjoyable. It felt like I was in a theater. I wish that theater wasn't empty, but that's a different story. Right. But yeah, it was cool, and I enjoyed that interview. Go. That one's the one to go to. But also check out Tim Cook and MKBHD talking about this stuff. There's just so much information. But one of the things that I enjoyed is Apple's approach to AI, and it was, first of all, this isn't going to spit out an essay for you. Right. This isn't a chat bot. There isn't really a text interface except for maybe the image generator. And even then, it's not a real text interface. You kind of have guidelines you can provide it. You can't generate real human photos. They're only animated or hand drawn. So they're always meant to be cartoony Hallmark cards that look awful. And the reasoning behind this is if you need those tools, go use them. That's part of the ChatGPT integration is Apple isn't trying to be all the things. They're trying to be useful things. And the useful things that they gave us, one thing I'm going to be using is the grammar check. You can check for, they have a proofread function. So I no longer need Grammarly, which is $150 a year to give me bad AI model recommendations on my grammar. To be fair, Grammarly was good a couple of years ago, but ever since they decided to start doing this AI stuff, it's gotten worse and worse and started giving nonsensical recommendations.
So hang on a second there. You've gone off Grammarly because it's become AI dependent, but you feel you won't need to use it because it's an AI dependent version in Apple. Because
Apple's AI will be functionally better. And here's why. Because it doesn't... So Apple's actually... Tim Cook's made it clear. He will not say Apple Intelligence is 100% unable to hallucinate. There is always the chance, but they've gone through every thing they can to ensure that it is accurate information, and there's a feedback system for users if you find something wonky. But what's important is the data sets are small. They're local. It's a specific model for proofreading. And the problem is stuff like Grammarly are just creating these functional GPT models that are trained on a bunch of grammar stuff from across the web, but the data set's so wide and so varied that it starts getting garbage in, and it starts getting this feedback loop because it's training on its own model, and people using bad recommendations from Grammarly are reinforcing the bad recommendations, whereas Apple's model is actually probably just a grammar book, I don't know, dictionary thing, with a bunch of useful information, and my poor judgment isn't going to tell it to give me more poor judgment. It's always going to be a model based on actual grammar knowledge. That is the separation there.
So basically, Apple's bought the Chicago Manual of Style or wherever it is.
Sure.
But what about the fact that there are Apple Intelligence APIs? I assume Grammarly can plug into this at some point. There's no point if it's going to do the same thing.
No, I think that's the point that I'm trying to make here. Maybe I'm doing a poor job of it. Is Apple's intelligence frameworks are set in stone. The only way they change is Apple goes in and physically updates the base frameworks. The knowledge database isn't getting trained on user input. There's no chance for random garbage to get in. It's not getting trained off of Reddit or other like the problem with a lot of these models is they're getting trained on their own outputs now because there's so much of their own output on the web. They're soaking it in. Apple's created a system where that's not going to happen, and that's really smart.
I'm just thinking of it from the Grammarly company's point of view. You don't want them to go out of business. Plenty of people like Grammarly. Are there things they can do? There is this API route. Maybe there's an opportunity for them
I don't mean for Grammarly to go out of business. My tool set needs for Grammarly are minimal. So I only really need the proofread function. So this goes back to needs. If you need a much more advanced database of things that you're storing in Grammarly and needing access to and tweaking with the tools, and there's so much more Grammarly can do, of course, go pay the money and use it. It's just the bare minimum I needed didn't exist anywhere else in a passable, good enough fashion until Apple did it. And now, wait, I have a free option that's included in my device that's actually intelligent enough to get this done of what I need to do. Cool. And then if you guys start seeing a bunch of weird grammar mistakes in my articles, then we know where to point the finger. But this is just one of those things. Sherlocking doesn't always mean Apple perfectly replaces something. Reminders and calendar does not replace Fantastical for most people. That's just not how this works.
This episode is brought to you by Fastmail. Recently on the AppleInsider podcast, Wes and I have been talking about how Apple makes great apps, but they go just so far. How when you're not a casual user, when you need more than Apple provides, that this is where the best third-party apps come in. We could have been talking about Fastmail. Fastmail schedules your outgoing emails, it snoozes your incoming ones, and in both cases, it does it right. These are functions that don't just sound good, you will actually use them, and they will transform your use, your dependency on email. Plus, you can do it all without having to have your email address end in iCloud.com or Gmail. With Fastmail, you can have your own private domain, so your address ends in at your name or your company name, whatever you need, whatever you want. Plus, everyone in your company or your family can use that same domain, which brings me to the very newest offering from Fastmail, multi-user plans. There are 3 of these, starting with the Duo plan where you and a partner get all of the convenience and security of Fastmail for a reduced price. Then there's the Fastmail family plan where up to 6 people can get in on the act. And then there's the business plan, which adds powerful admin controls for the security and the management of your company emails. Make email better for you, your family and your business with Fastmail. Try Fastmail for yourself for free for 30 days and get 10% off your first year at fastmail.com/AppleInsider. That's Fastmail. Fast as in quick, mail as in emails, fastmail.com/AppleInsider. And thanks to Fastmail for supporting the Apple Insider podcast. How about this? We are making the assumption so far that Apple's thing will work, writing tools will work. And sure. I do expect that it will, but one of the other things that stood out for me about Siri was that it will now be more conversational, specifically that it will remember what you asked last, so you don't have to keep saying. If I ask for restaurants in New York and then the next thing I say to it, what about museums? It knows I mean still in New York. Okay, that's obviously very good, obviously very useful, but we have been promised that in Siri from the start. So why have we not had it before? Why do we believe it now?
Okay, so that's actually a function of these models, not Siri. So while Apple's tried to do this before, It hasn't worked out because it's a problem. And one of the best parts of the talk show was John Giandrea, Apple's AI chief, saying, we don't like failures either. There's too many failure cases for Siri, and when it gets caught into these bottlenecks of human language, where it doesn't know how to tell you what time zone Los Angeles is in unless you phrase it a very specific way, very frustrating, and even Apple gets frustrated by that. So it's good that they're at least internally trying to battle this as well. The reason why this is different for large language models is because every time you start an interaction, imagine you're in the ChatGPT app and you start a new chat. When you start fresh, you are talking to the baseboard bot. There's no training data besides what created ChatGPT, the base framework, the foundational framework, right? When you give it anything, a query, question, if you write 6 paragraphs about how your grandmother wants you to learn how to build nuclear warheads, and because you're trying to convince it to tell you, that is part of the current model, the active model. And as long as you're having that conversation, every time you give it a new prompt, like, so you say something, it says something, you say something, it says something, all of that is being used to answer the next question. So you say you're 50 lines into this conversation with ChatGPT, and you say, okay, generate an image based on everything I've just, or not even that, just what about a recipe for spaghetti? Well, here's the funny thing. Everything that you've talked about plus your new query is now sent back through ChatGPT's LLM, the foundational model, to spit out whatever answer, because it's just a next word predictor. And the only way it knows how to predict the next word is to take everything it said plus the new bit and then tack on what the next words are going to be at the end, which is its response. So by design, Siri will know everything you've talked about because it is now part of the active model. Now, if you leave Siri alone for a while, that's all going to get thrown out because it's, basically memory in a database, kind of like RAM. It's going to get pushed out of the back end. But as long as it's relatively close together, you can't say at 11 a.m., what'd my mom say about this recipe? And then 3 hours later say, when does she get here? It's going to be like, she who? What are you talking about? But in the moment, in that interaction, all of that is saved up just because of how LLMs work.
Do you know, the other week, I realised you've never heard of the Kids from Fame, so there's no single thin possibility you'll get this. But where you took it there, but it reminds me of the British thing, the Chuckle Brothers, whole thing of to me, to you, to me, to you. Just carry on looking at me blankly there. I think we could move on for Apple Intelligence, except we never can. It's going to be with us in everything.
Well, I have one. I just happened. Well, you wanted to make a reference that was obscure. I'll make a reference that's obscure.
Okay.
Anyone who knows, I believe it's this almost nursery kind of level song. I heard it on Barney the Dinosaur. I'm sure it probably pre-originates that. I don't know. Maybe someone can tell me it was the Beatles or something. It probably wasn't. But it's, you heard the silly song of like every time you get to a new line, you add another thing to it. So the green grass grows around and around this hole in the ground, and it's, just that it keeps going and going, and the bird in the nest and the tree. It gets, you're piling onto it every verse, and it's kind of like a memory game, I guess. But it's a song.
I'm not really I think we should sing now to just
I'm not going to do it.
Get into
I've given you enough. Just look up green grass grows around and around. Right. You will find it. Because I can barely remember it myself, but it is a memory game. And each line you add, you have to go back and sing the entire song. That's an LLM. There you go. We've cracked it. Barney the Dinosaur taught us about LLMs.
Wow, a new definition. Okay. Just a silly thing. It was really silly things. There's a YouTube channel here, Shout Factory. It has lots of classic things. At the moment, they are constantly live streaming. Is it live streaming when it's recording? They are playing out live episodes of Alf in French, German, Japanese, all of these things. And every now and again, I'll find one and just put it on until my wife notices what in the world I'm watching. What a world we live in. But let's be sensible here.
Let's
one of the things I thought of, you're not going to distract me again with something sillier. Can you top? Barney the dinosaur and the Chuckle Brothers.
No. I was going to say, let's work at this backwards. So if you're going to make a point, go ahead.
Well, it's always a point. One of the things I think of whenever I know I'm going to talk to you is I kind of stock up on iPad questions I might have. And coming away from the keynote, I didn't have that many questions. I had a kind of sense that not a lot is going on. But actually, last week you mentioned that you were on another podcast, the iPad Pros one, and I said I was going off to listen to that after the show, so I went off to listen to that after the show. And you actually shocked me in that when you mentioned how if you take an iPad and you plug it into an external monitor, what you see in that external monitor must be Stage Manager. I thought that was appalling because I don't like Stage Manager. It's absolutely no way around it, not even in iPad OS 18.
I mean, you can make your iPad the old multitasking split view and stuff, but the monitor, it has to be Stage Manager by function. That's the only way it works.
Wow. Okay. That genuinely put me off plugging it into an external monitor. But all right, what did you take away from iPad OS 18? Because you are an iPad guy.
New features that are unique to the system, and that is handwriting recognition with math notes and the new sidebar to top bar customization. So let's get that one out of the way first because it's the most boring one. There's a top bar in some iPad apps that appear if you hide the sidebar. You can now drag things from the sidebar to the top bar to customize that. That's it. That's the update. So Apple TV, if you want to put Crunchyroll in the top bar, great, go for it. Files app, if you want to put a specific file system to the top, great, go ahead.
You see, that sounds useful to me. I got that. I like that, but dull. Okay.
It's a very small quality of life update. That it does what it says on the tin. Good job, Apple. But yeah, very small.
No.
But then the big one, the only real update to iPad OS, besides what we got with iOS and Apple Intelligence, is math notes and handwriting recognition. So these two things kind of go hand in hand because you can use your Apple Pencil to handwrite, and it will learn your handwriting within about 2 paragraphs of your writing, and you can use autocorrect to correct a misspelling, and it will correct it in your handwriting style, which is really cool. So many cool ways this works. You can convert it to text and all that stuff. I love it. I hope that this is the reason why we didn't get Journal yet, and we get a Journal update for iPad that allows us to handwrite into Journal, which would be really something. And then Math Notes allows you to use these same skills to write numbers and equations, and it corrects it into prettier versions of your handwriting, basically just straightening it out. It's still your handwriting, but it's more legible. And then you can add equal signs or underlines to do various notations, and it gives you the answer right away in your handwriting again. And graphical representations, you can edit how the graphs appear by writing in different things. Like, it's all very smart. And it completely destroys the need for solver, I guess. That one was a real Sherlock this time. It completely replaces the need for some of these calculators. But I will say, in James Thompson's defense, pCalc is still the better calculator app. Outside of Math Notes, there's a very solid chance that people will still be using pCalc because Apple's calculator is otherwise very basic.
For what it's worth, I'm still using pCalc. In fact, actually, I was swiping through my new home screens, and I was genuinely surprised to find the calculator app there, Apple's one, because I must have removed it years ago. So I have gone into it. I did play with it, but it hasn't replaced pCalc yet. I've realised, I think actually there are times Apple uses this word magical, and it shouldn't, but there are times when it is. And Math Notes, I'm in England. Are they going to do a translation thing and call it Maths Notes? Because Math Notes, even to my British language, it scans better than Maths Notes. Unless they call it Maths Note, just move the S around. Anyway, that looked to me like genuinely a piece of magic. Following your handwriting, particularly that just adding up a column of text because you put a line under them, solving an equation because you wrote an equal sign. That is the stuff of science fiction, I think. And yet, it's so dependent on handwriting, and my handwriting is so abominably bad. I looked at that and I just thought, yeah, challenge accepted. good luck
Well,
helping
they fix
with that.
it a little bit.
Yeah, but you're starting from a very bad base here. I'm not convinced.
Well, my handwriting is similar to that of a child kidnapping a teddy bear and writing in crayon on a note, a hostage note kind of thing. Like you're fully holding the crayon in your fist and just scratching it onto the paper in giant letters. That's basically my handwriting. So
right, that was way
we'll
too
have a
specific
competition
there. You have thought this through before.
I have described this before
Okay.
using exactly those
see.
terms. Yes.
All right. But you are confident. Well, actually, no, not confident. You've actually got the beta, and I understand the handwriting is there in iPadOS 18 at present. I haven't risked an iPad to find out. Have you risked yours, and did you find out? Have you tried it yet?
I have, and I believe it's starting to learn mine. I haven't spent much time with it, but yes, it is. My handwriting is abysmal. So let's see. I'm going to attempt to send you. I'm going to screenshot something in Vision OS.
Okay.
And then send it to you through Apple Notes. This is how convoluted things can be sometimes in this operating system, because you can't take an actual proper screenshot. It's like a iView screenshot, and then you can't. I don't know. Anyway, I can't get a window view of an app in Vision OS. But I'm gonna let you.
$3,500 and you can't take a screenshot. I don't know. There are times you don't sell me an Apple Vision Pro at all.
I dropped that in the middle of a word because I couldn't drop it in properly, and it is now in the...
Okay, I am looking at it. I'm seeing a nice blank picture of a mountain at the moment. Let's make this a visual word picture.
But anyway...
for the podcast.
Yeah, so...
That's...
Moving on, we have, like I said, we have, let's get through the operating system. iPadOS, very minimal, handwriting and such. Yeah, if you scroll to the top of the notes, for our show notes, you'll see it, by the way.
Ah, got it. Right, okay.
Yes, so...
I'll make this... maybe I won't put this in the chapter artwork bit. I see no reason to embarrass you.
No, I mean, that was
fair.
a scribble, to be fair. I wasn't trying, but...
Yeah, and there's a typing mistake. Right, well,
did I make a typing?
We'll see. It might be. Well, let's. We could argue that over whether it's
not a
apostrophe.
typing.
It should be let.
Oh,
let
I didn't
us
put an apostrophe.
do something. You see. So, okay.
I am an excellent typist, William, but my writing is neither grammatically nor scientifically correct. So there you go.
Okay. Let's find out later whether that made it into the chapter artwork or is hidden forever. Because, of course...
They have to determine if my writing is even English.
Yeah, but the thing is, as soon as you show your handwriting, I feel obligated to show mine. But I will surmount this obligation. I will put it behind me. I will rise above this. And we will move on to other platforms. Which one are you going to go for?
So, what I was going to suggest earlier is let's hit the small ones first, and then we'll finish on iOS, because that's the big one. So, tvOS, we have an update. Screensavers.
Yeah.
I'm actually excited about this.
Yeah.
Because I called this a long time ago. I don't know if you remember this, William, but I said this. This was to Steven, I believe. So you won't remember this unless you listen to the show. We'll check your commitment here. But I said, do you know how beautiful scenes and things like Foundation are? Where it's just where they're scanning over different environments, and they're scanning over different locations, and they have so many of these sci-fi beautiful landscapes. What if they turn that into an Apple TV screensaver? And they've done that 3 years on from me saying that. I think, I don't know. It's been a long time. Very happy with this. I will absolutely be using the screensaver.
Yes, I'm with you on that. I will be looking for silo artwork and all this stuff. But tvOS, Apple did this thing of we've invented something new here that basically someone else has had for ages. They added, Amazon call it X-ray. So you're watching something, and for some reason, you're not actually in the story at all. You just think, oh, where did I see that actor before? In another show. Work it out later. But no. If you must, you can now scroll down, swipe down with your Siri remote, and you'll see a list of credits for that actor.
Apple TV Plus content.
Yeah, great. That's fine. The number of ways to interrupt watching something is just increasing all the time.
So,
and people come away. There was this thing, I think I've said this one to you before as well. I remember somebody really famous on Twitter truly complaining about a TV show, how idiotic it was that they hadn't told us something. And they had. Because I'd actually already seen it. I'd reviewed it. So I was on Twitter what was playing. So I knew that the moment they actually said in big letters, practically with a caption, precisely this important thing, she was tweeting about another show for it. So, okay, up to her, what she watches, what she doesn't. Well, but she criticised the show for something she did. And this is just drives me spare. So I will never use X-Ray or whatever Apple calls their version of it. Rant over.
Well, this feature, I think, is interesting, if only because it doesn't have to happen on the Apple TV. You can do it on the remote app on another device. So I could have my iPad mini in a little stand on my coffee table connected to the remote for the Apple TV and have it just broadcast that information in a live stream, basically, of who's on the screen at that moment. And I could see this coming to outside of Apple TV Plus. Of course, they're going to launch it here. They're going to have to work with partners and get permission. But I see this moving outwards as long as you're in the TV app. So the only person that's never going to take advantage of this is Netflix. But whatever, I canceled my subscription with them anyway because I'm getting tired of having to leave the TV Plus, the TV app to do anything. And they were the one outlier for that. But I expect this will get to other platforms later. As long as you're in the TV app, it's going to work. Kind of thing. And I don't know. I like it. Me and my girlfriend will be watching something, and we do talk sometimes and say, hey, that actor, do you recognize them? Or that voice actor, because we'll be watching anime or something. We'll be like, hey, they did this voice before, and pull up call sheet, Casey List's call sheet, and look it up. So I found this functionality interesting. I'll of course still be using call sheet because this doesn't replace that. But I do like, other than actors, the ability to see what song is playing and add it to my Apple Music library. So that is also an interesting little synergy piece there.
Okay, on the one hand, you reassured me there, the idea that it could just be on your phone remote. Okay, if that's your choice, your problem, deal with it. But the opposite is the fact that what I hadn't realised was I could be watching something with somebody and I want to look at whoever the actor is, so they've got to see it as well. I'm thinking divorce level.
Right. Imagine you're in a movie theater and you see like this X-ray menu appear because the guy on the projector wants to see who's in the movie, right? Like it's that level of interruption. I never personally want to like jump in the middle with UI on the screen. Like that's terrible. I like the idea of it being on the remote as well. That's smart. But
we could go off on a UI video rant, but we have two things to cover before we even get to AppleInsider Plus and the betas of doom, which is the WatchOS. What did I miss? I like the sound of the vitals thing that Dr. Sambai was mentioning as I went by. What's that? It's just surfaces some detail.
It's giving you more information about. It's basically gathering everything it gets from you while you sleep, heart rate data, and stuff to generate a baseline health and to say when you're outside of that baseline. And that baseline can be affected by you've had too much alcohol, so your heart rate is elevated, or you haven't been getting enough sleep, so your sleep, so if you go outside of two of these, I think 6 metrics, you'll get an alert saying your vitals may be out of range. And then you can see this all on a chart. It's in the Health app. There's a Vitals app on Apple Watch. It's very interesting. Just more ways to use this health information and more ways to have the stranglehold on watches, because if you literally take off your Apple Watch now, you will die, according to Apple. So
okay. Was there anything else in the Apple Watch? There's bound to be some fitness exercise stuff, so skip all of that.
Yes. They measure your, what is the word for this? Effort level in exercise, and you can tell them that they've lied. So, William, don't worry. When you do a workout, you can tell them that it wasn't a effort level 1, it was effort level 5 every time. And correct them on that.
All right, I'm in. I'm back in. Okay.
And then finally, there's in the Smart Stack, there's now live activity support. So anything that was a live activity on your iPhone can show up in there, and it uses the same information and UI, so developers don't have to do anything; they just appear there. So like the weather can appear there, and warn you ahead of time if it's going to rain. So more Smart Stack widgets. I like that. I just wish, I don't know. I like the Apple Watch being passive, and the fact that I even have to scroll up to see those is just if there's something to show me, like a notification, kind of have that appear first and make me dismiss it to see the watch face. I don't know, like give me more proactive features, Apple, with this Apple Intelligence, but it's not on Apple Watch.
Oh, true. You said iOS is left. We have at least touched on this with some of my favorite.
macOS Sequoia.
I'm sorry, I can't believe I mixed up. macOS Sequoia. Well, I'm actually looking at the Macintosh screensaver of it now on the Mac beside me, and it's gorgeous. Susan Care's artwork from the 1980s, blown up massively and made into a wallpaper and a screensaver. So there you go. That's macOS Sequoia.
Yes, there's not much in macOS, like you say. I mean, they didn't even really change system settings. They did an iPhone and iPad, of course. I honestly don't. What was macOS? Like, what did they do, William? You tell me.
Well, actually, I thought system settings did change. It's more. I might be mixing it up with the phone here now. Isn't that funny? I'm not sure. The sequence was more organised than it was before, but I wasn't that fussed because I thought it was all right. There's the iPhone mirroring, but we haven't seen that yet. I'm beginning to wonder, why did I upgrade? But okay.
Yes. Oh, okay.
Oh, of course. Yes.
It's so we have the Passwords app, or replacing the Keychain app, which is much nicer and safer, and you don't have to worry about someone going in and accidentally deleting a certificate that's important to their system. You now just have this little thing. This is where they revealed the Passwords app, and they're just like, oh, by the way, it's everywhere else, because people were getting a little worried. This was late into the presentation. They're like, where's the Passwords app? Well, they saved it for macOS. Windowing, you can drag a window to the edge and it resizes. That's really about it.
Yeah, it's just... Okay, that Sherlock's a few things as well, and actually I believe Windows has long done this thing.
Of course.
But I found that slightly annoying because, yes, if you drag a window to the side, it will tile, as they say. Drag it to the left, let go, and it will fill exactly half your screen. Fine. But it will, by default, it will only do that if you drag while holding the Option key. And I cannot conceive of a way you would find that out until somebody told you.
Until you do
Once
it.
you know, yeah. I mean, you're leaning on the Option key as you drag. What are the odds? If you go into settings, you can turn that off and just let it drag anywhere. But who would have thought to go into settings to find a keystroke that you didn't know was needed for a function that you've already got in a third-party app? So I thought that was odd, but beta days.
I would love to see this on iPadOS Stage Manager. They didn't give it to us, but I feel like this will eventually make it to iPadOS if they give us better windowing systems at all. But yes, I would like to see that. But yeah, I mean, macOS, it's not that it's small, it's just that it got everything iOS got.
Yes.
So just kind of like iPadOS, there's actually no Mac specific thing except for the iPhone mirroring, and the usual screensaver stuff.
Well, also, actually, right now, that I am sure this will change, there is a difference in the Passwords app. On the iPhone, you can't import any passwords from other... Right? I mean, on the Mac, you can.
Right.
It's a couple of step processes, but it's there on the Mac. It isn't on the iPad. I'll tell you one thing that really, really surprised me is Apple made this thing of saying they've been working on passwords and stuff for 25 years. And of course, I know Safari has been saving them. And for years, I've had this thing where I go to enter a password and up pops Safari's box, and so does one password box. And you're trying to get through all this. But there were 706 passwords already in the Passwords app when I got there, and 41 router password apps. And going through thinking, that's the Skybox that we had 20 years ago. And I don't remember any of these things, but somewhere through multiple Macs, multiple operating systems, Safari has kept it all waiting, ready.
I'm quite happy with this app. I hope they give us more later. We have found out that you don't need a website anymore to generate a password. So technically, if you want to use it to store your security keys for your apps or something, like you can trick it into doing that. But Overall, fine. macOS Sequoia. I think the Apple Intelligence stuff is kind of stolen this year, and this is honestly this might be the year that everyone's been asking for. Of let's just focus on making things more stable, because while Apple Intelligence is huge, it's a shadow over everything. The smaller updates across the systems are all very welcome. I like what they did on iPad. I like what they did on Mac. But at least we do have some user-facing features that are very important, but they are separate from the operating system in a way. So I think that's what's interesting about this year. It is, if we didn't have Apple Intelligence to talk about, it would actually be kind of a quiet year overall. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe this is the stability year people have been asking for.
The snow leopard year. Actually, let's stop there, because I have some news that I need to mention about the Apple Insider podcast, and it's all to do with all of this stuff. I'm so looking forward to this. This is, of course, the usual Friday edition with Wes and I going on over what just happened in WWDC. But tomorrow, on Saturday, there's going to be another extra Apple Insider podcast episode, which I think is going to be really special, because it's going to be me with a guest. The guest is Alexander Kosovan, who's the CEO of Setup, a MacPaw, which makes Setup. Now, all the way up to the build-up of WWDC, Wes and I were talking about we want to get in a developer in, because we write about this, but really we look at it from the point of view of us as users for this. And a developer has all this extra knowledge on the inside of how much work it is to do this, how much of this is going to be a benefit to them, what's going to be a problem, how busy is their summer going to be. And that's great. And Alexander can tell us exactly that, because MacPaw is a developer of Clean My Mac, Clean My iPhone, all of these things, and also actually the Setup app. You don't think about this, but Setup, which is a bundle of 200 odd apps for the Mac, comes through as kind of its own setup app. You go through this app to choose what you want from the set and all this. It's all very nicely done. All has to be updated. So here he is, one man who is a developer of a very successful series of apps, but one of those is Setup. So he also has to know what's going on with all 200 developers of the other apps. So if you could get one person to talk about WWDC from the developer's point of view, it's Alexander Kosovan, and we've got him in tomorrow's thing. And this personal thing, he was at Apple Park for WWDC, so just try to stop me asking him what that was like there. That's in the very next episode of the Apple Insider podcast. But Wes, right after that, you're back in HomeKit Insider, aren't you? Well, more of you.
Well, so it's always hit and miss with HomeKit Insider, because Andrew's and I's schedules are so mismatched. Sometimes Andrew has to do solo shows, so we'll see if I am in next week's show or not, depending on Andrew's schedule. But I will be there if I am talking about the new home updates and everything else. But William, I had one question for you. I know we've gone over the usual hour, but do we have 5 minutes or 5 to 10 minutes to just breathe?
It depends. You're slightly worrying me, so I want to say no, but also I'm curious, so yes.
Well, I think it would be an injustice to spend an entire show without at least saying what's new in iOS 18.
That's true. Well, I thought we can touch on things. We have the nice app stuff. We have the password app. What stood out to you then that I'm forgetting?
Well, I just wanted to give a brief overview, and this is probably going to be the focus of our next show after that lovely interview. We'll dive deep into iOS 18 and everything coming to that. So don't worry, we will get to it. It's just there's so much to talk about, and Apple Intelligence and Vision OS took up so much of the show today. But I am very excited for iOS 18. I've installed it and have been customizing my stuff. But yes, you can have dark mode icons, filtered icons with colors, and if you do it, it goes system wide. It's not just for the home screen. I really hope this gets focus filters in the future that can change what filter or what icons are used per focus. That's an obvious next step, but this is awesome. It's another huge step forward in customization. You can remove app and widget labels by turning on the large icon mode, which is awesome. So you it still looks like an iPhone, but it's so uniquely new that you can't help but just stare at it. It's so nice. I like that you can place icons anywhere on the home screen, widgets as well. And it's still in the grid, of course, but you can just put them anywhere in the grid. The empty space no longer needs to be a trick. It's just empty space. Outside of that, there's so much customization. Everything in iOS is customization now, and this is where I've been getting at for a long time, saying iPhone versus Android customization. You can really get in there. Everything is customization, including the Photos app. Every part of the new Photos UI is customizable by the user because they want you to have the Photos experience you're expecting when you open it. That's awesome. So we're gonna talk more about Photos later, but all of this together, the new Safari stuff, you can summarize pages, the new reader mode, of course, Apple Intelligence itself. There's the Passwords app is also on iOS. Just really good stuff. And of course, the Messages app has tap back reactions with colored emoji. You can use any emoji to do those. Text wrapping or text effects that are new. Different things instead of just the usual stuff like wiggling the text or something. You can apply those per word, which is fun. Control Center.
Goodness,
we didn't even mention Control Center today. You can fully customize Control Center in iPad and iPhone now and have multiple pages, and that is just phenomenal. And even with multiple pages, don't worry, you're not swiping 15 times. You just drag your finger and keep dragging until you get to the page you want to. Awesome. So there's just so much in iOS. We will get there next week, so be patient. But if you guys have any questions or anything, of course, you can always get a hold of us. I'm excited to continue talking about WWDC and playing with these betas.
I really looked forward to this year's WWDC, and although we're saying that about the Mac not having much, I feel overall it did deliver. I don't yet regret updating my iPhone to iOS 18, although that is obviously a subject we're covering in a moment. I tell you what, Wes, we found out where we can get you, at least often on HomeKit Insider. I'm on email all the time. How about we'll stop it there, and then maybe we can have some sort of doom drums come in before Apple Insider Plus. But in the meantime, thank you very much to our sponsor, Fastmail, for that. Thank you very much for listening. Speak to you, remember, tomorrow with a special edition, and then back again next week. Love this stuff. Speak to you then.